Hello, dear viewers. I am a global nationalist. I support nationalism in my country, India, and in all countries around the globe. Today is the third Saturday of the month, and so, as per my schedule, I will be making a video about nationalism in a South Asian country. The nation I will talk about today is Bhutan. I want to talk about the Memorandum of Understanding that Bhutan signed with China in October last month. Last month, Bhutan signed a memorandum of MOU with China about its border dispute with China. This is the official press release from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Bhutan. Here it says that uh, between the Foreign Minister of Bhutan and the Assistant Minister of Foreign Affairs of China, a memorandum of understanding has been reached, and this has been done to expedite the Bhutan China boundary negotiations. This is a three-step roadmap for expediting it, and it was signed in a virtual signing on 14th October. Boundary negotiations between Bhutan and China. Yeah. So before go on to the background of the boundary dispute between Bhutan and China, I also have to mention that there is, as per this press release, they do not mention what the three steps are in this MOU, and what they don't give any other details of the MOU other than that it will provide a fresh impetus to the boundary talks, and it is expected that the implementation of this roadmap, in a spirit of goodwill, understanding, and accommodation, will bring the boundary negotiations to a successful conclusion that is acceptable to both sides. So, the little we know about this is that um, the boundary dispute has been uh, not been able to be resolved by China and Bhutan, and so this MOU will seek to create a fresh impetus. Impetus means something like encouragement or push. So they believe that this MOU will help them resolve the boundary talks or the boundary problem, and that in a spirit of goodwill, the boundary negotiations will be that basically they want the conclusion to the boundary negotiation to be in goodwill, understanding, and accommodation, and they want a conclusion that is acceptable to both sides. So that's all we know about the MOU. However, at least directly. But from that, we can understand a lot if we also take into account the whole boundary dispute between China and Bhutan. This boundary dispute goes back to the 1911 when the Republic of China maintained a territorial claim on parts of Bhutan. This was maintained by the People's Republic of China after the Chinese Communist Party took control of mainland China in the Chinese Civil War in 1949. Mao Zedong declared in the Chinese Revolutionary Communist Party that the correct boundaries of China would include Burma, Bhutan, and Nepal. This basically the reason for this is that he believed that Bhutan is a part of Tibet and therefore China. And in 1959, China released a map where considerable proportions of Bhutan were included in its territorial claims. Now, after the 1959 Tibetan Rebellion and after Dalai Lama's arrival in India, when China invaded and conquered Tibet, many Tibetan refugees came to Bhutan, around 6,000 Tibetans. But however, this became too much for Bhutan, even though they accepted them, they couldn't accept anymore, and so they closed its border to China. And because of China's invasion of Tibet, Bhutan grew closer to India because it believed that India could protect it from China. And Yeah, and the modern dispute goes back begins in 19 begins in 1984 when negotiations began. They had had so far 24 rounds of boundary talks and 10 rounds of meeting at the expert group level. So, but however, China has continued to claim more territory of Bhutan. Their main Originally, their claims were towards North Bhutan and West Bhutan, but now they are also claiming East Bhutan, which is a major problem. And East Bhutan is a new claimant that they've made. And now uh, we can't talk about Bhutan and China without talking about the Doklam crisis when China constructed a road in Doklam, which is a disputed territory, which is at the meeting point of Bhutan, India, and China. On the same day, the Bhutanese border was on high alert, and they protested China's construction of this road. And India also supported Bhutan, and a standoff occurred between China and India in June of that year at the Tri Junction in Doklam. Eventually, China uh, backed down, and the Indian soldiers destroyed the construction site. However, there are reports now that China has tried to still intrude into Doklam, but through a different way, not through the same path that they took, which India opposed. And also, China still is trying to put pressure Bhutan to concede some territory. Um, it's built some villages along the border with Bhutan, and basically China wants to pressure Bhutan because I think because Bhutan is such a small country, it thinks that before taking on big countries like India and the US via Taiwan, they should first seek to get some territory from a small country like Bhutan, and they hope to do this by driving a wedge between India and Bhutan. Now, what should Bhutan do? I think Bhutan has to uh, say simply no, that they will not uh, concede any of their territory. They have not gotten any of their territory through conquest. This has always been their territory, it's not been China's. Therefore, it should remain with them. And I think that the signing of the MOU has not a good idea because it will not discourage China but actually encourage them. And yeah, Bhutan also should not rely too much on India but should become self sufficient, has to start building weapons, importing weapons, creating a self sufficient army. Maybe it should also arm its citizens like the US does, allow them to buy and sell guns so that if China invades, the people can defend themselves, and this will make it much more difficult for China to attack and harass Bhutan, and will force China to be peaceful, which will prevent any war from occurring. Because if China does invade Bhutan, and India will most likely come to protect Bhutan, which will cause a war between the two Asian powerhouses. So yeah, this is I think the best option that Bhutan has to deal with this issue, and I hope they do it. And because they're a very good country, they've never had a problem with India. They've never um, disputed with India, and we have good relations with them. So I have naturally I have a fond feeling for them. But in this, I've tried to be as objective as possible. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say. If you want to see another video in this playlist, click here. If you want to see the previous video, click here. Thank you for watching. Vande Mataram.